I never thought a simple smile could change everything. We were just fixing up another house, surrounded by dust, paint, and long hours under the relentless sun. But then the owner's daughter walked outside, looked right at me, and said something I will never forget. That single moment turned an ordinary job into the story that completely changed my life. My name is Jake. I'm 23, born and raised in a small town just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For the past year and a half, I've been working on my father's construction crew. 5 guys total, all hard workers who know their way around a job site. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. We build, we fix, we restore, and at the end of the week, we've earned every dollar with sweat and dust covering our skin. That morning felt like any other. The sun was already beating down by the time we pulled up to the new project. A 2-story colonial-style house in a quiet upscale neighborhood. Big front porch, white columns, and those green wooden shutters that looked like they hadn't been touched in 20 years. My father talked to the owners, an older couple who seemed polite but reserved, while the rest of us unloaded ladders, buckets, and paint sprayers from the truck bed. We were hired to do a full exterior restoration. Scrape off the old paint, repair cracked stucco, and bring the whole place back to life. It was the kind of long, detailed project we liked. Enough work to keep us busy for weeks. I remember thinking it was going to be just another job. Long days, sore muscles, lunch breaks in the back of the pickup truck. Nothing special. The morning went by fast. The smell of primer hung thick in the air, the radio playing classic rock from someone's phone, and the usual back and forth between the guys. Jokes, teasing, someone always forgetting a tool. My father kept an eye on everyone, but trusted me enough to handle most of the higher work on the scaffolding. He's a tough man, old school, but fair. Working with him isn't always easy, but I've learned more from him than from anyone else in my life. Around noon, the owners came out to check on the progress. They seemed satisfied but distant, the kind of people who like to supervise from the porch steps. Their house screamed comfort and money, the kind of life I never really thought about having. I just focused on keeping the paint line straight and the coat smooth. I didn't notice anyone else at first. By the afternoon, the sun was brutal. My shirt stuck to my back and all I wanted was cold water and shade. We decided to take a quick break, sitting on the front steps with our sandwiches. My father was talking with one of the guys about the next phase of the project when the front door opened behind us. That's when I saw her for the first time. She looked young, maybe 18, with long brown hair tied back loosely and a soft, curious expression on her face. She carried a tray with glasses of lemonade and a plate of homemade cookies. At first, I thought she was just being polite, helping her mother out, but there was something in the way she looked at us, or maybe at me specifically, that caught me completely off guard. She smiled shyly and said, her voice gentle and kind, "Hi, my mom asked me to bring this out for you guys. It's really hot today." For a second, the noise around me disappeared. The laughter, the radio, the sound of traffic in the distance. All of it faded. I nodded, trying not to stare too obviously. "Thanks. That's really nice of you." My father thanked her too, and the other guys jumped in with casual small talk. I just sat there, suddenly very aware of the dust on my hands and how sweaty I must have looked. She turned to walk back toward the house, and for some reason, I couldn't look away. That was it. Just a few seconds, nothing more. But something about that moment stuck with me. I didn't even know her name yet. All I knew was that for the first time in a long while, I felt curious about someone. Not just attracted, but genuinely interested. Like there was more to this job than just paint and ladders. At that point, I had no idea that one sentence from her would change everything in my life. The next morning, we showed up at the house again, just like always. The air was cooler in the early hours, but you could tell it was going to be another scorching day. I climbed up the scaffolding, paintbrush in hand, trying to focus on the wall in front of me. Though, truth be told, my thoughts kept drifting back to that girl from yesterday. I didn't even know her name, but that short moment, the lemonade, the soft greeting, the way she looked at me, it kept replaying in my head like a song I couldn't forget. By mid-morning, I was covered in paint dust, sweat running down my back. The radio buzzed quietly behind me, someone singing along off-key. Then I heard the front door open again. Instinctively, I looked down and there she was. She was wearing a light blue t-shirt and jeans, holding another tray with cold drinks. "Hey," she said with that same shy smile. "Thought you guys could use something cold." My father thanked her before I could even open my mouth. She walked closer, handing out glasses one by one, and when she got to me, I tried to look calm. Probably failed miserably. I took the glass, nodded, and smiled back at her. She hesitated for half a second, tilted her head slightly, and said almost under her breath, "Your smile suits you." The guys nearby burst out laughing, making a few jokes at my expense, but she blushed and laughed too. I felt my face heat up, not from the sun this time. I wanted to say something back, something smooth or clever, but all that came out was an awkward thanks. It was such a small thing, a passing comment, but it stuck in my mind for the rest of the day. Every time I caught my reflection in a window or metal surface, I found myself half smiling without even realizing it. Her words had flipped a switch somewhere deep inside me. After that, she started showing up more often. Sometimes she would bring coffee in the morning. Sometimes she would just come out pretending to check her phone on the porch. We would exchange a few words, harmless stuff at first. "How's the work going? Do you always help your dad? What's that tool called?" She asked questions that sounded innocent, but I could tell she wasn't just making small talk. And I wasn't either. There was something natural about her. No fake attitude, no trying to impress anyone. She didn't look at me like I was just the construction worker covered in paint. She looked at me like a person. That's rare. One afternoon, I was sanding the window frames near the front entrance when she came out with a bottle of cold water. "You missed a spot," she said, her tone playful but warm. I laughed, looking back at my work. "I'm sure I did. You going to fire me over it?" She shook her head, smiling wider now. "No, I think you're doing great." It was just a short exchange, but it made my entire day. Even my father noticed that I had been in a particularly good mood lately. He asked if I got a raise or something. I just shrugged and said something like that. As the week went by, I started learning little things about her. Her name was Emma. She had just finished high school and was taking a gap year before deciding what to study. Her mother wanted her to go into law. Her father wanted business, but she said she didn't want to be someone's idea of perfect. She wanted something real, something that made her feel alive. That hit me harder than I expected. I knew exactly what she meant. I had spent my whole life doing what was expected too. Working with my father, saving money, sticking to the plan. No one ever asked what I actually wanted. Every day, our conversations got a little longer. Every time she came out, her parents weren't around, and I noticed she always looked over her shoulder before talking to me. There was a sense of quiet rebellion in her, like she was tired of living by someone else's rules. One afternoon, when the rest of the crew went out for supplies, I stayed behind to finish cleaning up some tools. She came out again, this time without anything in her hands. She just leaned on the porch railing, watching me work. "You really don't take breaks, do you?" she said. I wiped my hands on my jeans, trying to look professional. "Breaks don't get the job done." She laughed softly. "You don't need to try so hard. You already do great." There was a short silence after that, the kind where you both know something is there, but neither wants to be the first to say it. Then her mother called from inside, and she rolled her eyes just a little. "I should go," she said quietly, "but I'll see you tomorrow." "Yeah," I said. "See you tomorrow." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her voice, her smile, the way she looked right into my eyes when she said that line about my smile. It wasn't just flirtation. It felt genuine. And that scared me a little because I knew the line between her world and mine wasn't meant to blur. Still, something inside me told me this wasn't just a random encounter. It felt like the start of something that neither of us had planned for, but both of us needed. By the time the third week rolled around, we were nearly finished with the house. The final coat of paint was drying and the place looked brand new. It was the kind of job my father liked. Clean, ahead of schedule, and paid on time. But for me, This one had started to mean something entirely different. Every morning, I would pull up in the truck, glance at the porch, and try not to look too obvious. And almost every time, Emma would be there. Sometimes reading, sometimes pretending to water the plants, but always smiling when she saw me. It was never planned, but it felt like our own little routine. I didn't realize how much I had gotten used to seeing her until one day she wasn't there. The porch was empty, and for some reason the workday felt twice as long. By the afternoon, though, she appeared, walking quietly down the driveway with her headphones around her neck. She looked tired but happy to see me. "Hey," she said, handing me a coffee she had brought from town. "I didn't see you this morning. Thought maybe you disappeared." I laughed. "Nope, still here. Hard to disappear with this many paint stains on me." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Good. I was starting to think I imagined you." There was something about the way she said that, soft, honest, with a trace of nervousness, that made my chest tighten. For a second, it didn't feel like we were standing in front of her parents' house. It felt like the rest of the world had gone quiet. Over the next few days, we talked more. Not just quick exchanges anymore. Real conversations. She told me she had always felt trapped in that house. "My parents mean well," she said, "but everything feels planned out, like I'm living a life that's already been decided." I told her I understood completely. Working with my father since I was 19, I sometimes felt the same way. I respected him deeply, but there were days when I wanted more. To see what else I could be. Emma looked at me for a long moment after that, then said quietly, "You will. I can tell." That night after work, she sent me a message. I hadn't given her my number, but I guess she had found it on one of the business cards my father had left in the kitchen. She wrote, "Meet me at the park tomorrow evening." I stared at that text for a good minute before replying, "Sure." The next day, I barely noticed the hours pass. The crew finished packing up early, and for once my father didn't ask me to stay behind. I changed shirts, cleaned up as best I could, and drove to the park on the edge of town. The sun was setting and the air smelled like fresh grass and barbecue from nearby houses. When I saw her walking toward me, everything else faded. She wasn't dressed fancy, just a light sundress, sandals, and a denim jacket, but she looked effortlessly beautiful. "Wow," I said, then caught myself. "I mean, you look nice." She laughed quietly. "You don't have to be nervous, Jake." We walked for a long time, talking about everything. Her plans, my work, what it's like to spend summers covered in paint and dust. She listened like no one ever had before. And when she talked, I found myself wanting to protect that kind of honesty she carried. At one point, we sat on a bench near the lake. Fireflies were starting to flicker above the water. She turned to me and said, "Do your parents ever expect too much from you?" I thought about it carefully. Maybe, but I think they just want to know I'll be okay. Sometimes that means they don't see who I really am. She nodded slowly. "That's exactly how I feel." There was a pause, the kind that isn't awkward. It's full of meaning, like both of you are hearing something louder than words. Then she said, "I'm glad I met you." I looked at her, not sure what to say. "Me too," was all that came out. The next day, things were different between us. When I arrived, she was already outside waiting. We didn't need to say much, just a glance, a small smile, and that was enough. But that peace didn't last long. Late in the afternoon, while we were cleaning up for the day, her mother stepped outside. She looked straight at Emma, then at me, and I could tell from her expression that something had shifted. Her voice was calm, but sharp. "Emma, inside now." The girl froze for a moment, then nodded and walked back toward the house. She didn't even glance back at me. I stood there, brush in hand, trying to pretend nothing had happened, but my stomach felt heavy. When her mother disappeared inside, one of the guys whistled low. "Oh man, looks like somebody's in trouble." I forced a laugh, but inside I knew he was right. Something had been set in motion, something I couldn't undo. That evening, I packed my tools slower than usual, staring at the now quiet porch. It was strange how a house could look so peaceful and feel so tense at the same time. I wanted to believe this was just a misunderstanding, that tomorrow she would come out again, smiling like always. But deep down, I already knew tomorrow would be different. The next morning, everything felt different. The house that used to seem peaceful now felt tense, like the air itself had changed. My father noticed it right away. "Something happened yesterday?" he asked, glancing at me while unloading the truck. I shook my head, pretending not to know what he meant, but I could feel it. Something had broken between that family and us, and it had everything to do with Emma. She didn't come out that morning. The windows stayed closed and the front door never opened. Every time I looked toward the house, I caught myself hoping to see her, but nothing. Around noon, while I was cleaning brushes, her mother stepped out onto the porch. She wasn't smiling. Her tone was polite but cold. "I'd appreciate it," she said carefully, "if you kept things professional. My daughter is young and she doesn't need distractions right now." I didn't say anything. My father looked at me confused, then nodded to her and said, "Of course, ma'am. We're just here to work." She went back inside and I could feel every guy on the crew staring at me. My father waited until she was out of earshot before he said quietly, "Son, whatever that's about, end it now. Don't make it harder than it has to be." I didn't argue, but deep down, I knew I couldn't just end it. It wasn't some passing crush. Something about Emma had gotten under my skin. She was real, different from anyone I had ever met. That evening, after we finished packing up, I got a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry about today. Can we talk?" It was her. I hesitated. I knew this could only make things worse, but I replied anyway. "Where?" She sent back one word. "Bridge." There was an old wooden bridge just outside town, the kind kids used to hang out on during summer nights. When I got there, the sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky orange and pink. She was already waiting, wearing a hoodie, jeans, hair tied back, nervous but determined. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble," I said quietly. She shook her head firmly. "You didn't. They just think they can control everything."
I'm 18, Jake.
"I can make my own choices." I wanted to tell her that I admired her courage, but also that this could ruin her relationship with her parents forever. Instead, I just said, "They're scared. Maybe they think I'm not good enough for you." She looked at me seriously. "That's exactly what they think, but they don't even know you." We stood there in silence for a while, listening to the water beneath the bridge. She took a deep breath. "I can't stop seeing you, Jake. I tried, but I can't. You make me feel like myself." I didn't know what to say to that. My heart was pounding, so I did the only thing that felt right. I promised her I wouldn't give up either. From then on, we met in secret, sometimes at a cafe downtown, sometimes at the park where we first walked together. We talked about everything. Her plans for college, my dream of starting my own construction business someday, even the kind of house we would want in the future. For a while, it felt perfect, like the world outside didn't exist. But it did. One night, after a long day at work, I got a call from my father. He sounded tense. "The homeowners called," he said slowly. "They're ending the contract early." Said something about a personal issue. "Care to explain?" I froze. I knew exactly what that meant. Emma's father had found out. When I went back the next day to collect our remaining tools, her father was there waiting. He was a tall man in his 50s, dressed in a crisp white shirt. His expression full of anger he was trying hard to hide. "You stay away from my daughter," he said flatly. "You understand me? She's a child. You're a worker. That's the end of it." I clenched my jaw, but kept my voice steady. "With all due respect, sir, she's 18. She can decide who she talks to." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Not while she lives under my roof." My father came out of the truck then, sensing trouble, and grabbed my shoulder. "Let's go," he said quietly. "It's not worth it." So we left. We packed everything up, and just like that, the job was over. For the next few days, I didn't hear from her. Her number went silent. No texts, no calls, nothing. I drove past the house once just to see if there were lights on, but the front gate was closed and the curtains drawn. I tried to convince myself to move on, to forget it and focus on work, but I couldn't. It wasn't just a fling. It felt like something real, something I wasn't supposed to have, but did anyway. Then one night around 11, my phone buzzed. A single message. "I miss you." I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to answer. I knew what replying would mean. More trouble, more risk. But at that point, it didn't matter anymore. I texted back, "Where are you?" No answer came that night. The next morning, I tried calling. Her phone was off. That's when I knew something was wrong. Her parents had one, at least for now, and I had no idea if I would ever see her again. A week had passed since the last time I saw her. The house where we had been working looked empty now. No cars in the driveway, no light behind the curtains. My father and I had already moved on to a new project in the next town over, painting another big house that looked almost the same, but felt nothing like it. I tried to focus on work, but every brush stroke reminded me of her. Every time I saw a porch light flicker on, I thought of that house and the girl who had changed everything for me. My father didn't bring it up again. I think he knew I was hurting, but in his own quiet way, he believed time would fix it. Maybe he was right. Maybe it usually does. But this didn't feel like something time could erase. That Friday morning, we were setting up ladders outside a newly built house on the edge of town. The neighborhood was quiet, not much traffic, just the occasional car passing by. I was on the second rung loading a roller with paint when I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel behind me. I didn't pay attention at first. We get deliveries all the time. But then I heard my name. Jake. I turned around and my heart just stopped. It was Emma. She was standing next to a small gray sedan, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No makeup, hair tied up, a backpack slung over her shoulder, and a paper bag in her hand. She looked nervous, but there was a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "Emma," I said, frozen in place. "What are you?" Before I could finish, she walked straight up to me, ignoring the stares from the guys on the crew. My father stood a few feet away, trying to figure out what was happening. She stopped right in front of me, looked up, and said quietly but clearly enough for everyone to hear, "I told them I'm done living someone else's life. I'm here because I choose you." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. I didn't know what to say, whether to ask if she was sure or to tell her this was crazy. But when I saw the way she looked at me, calm, certain, free, all the words I had been rehearsing in my head for days just disappeared. I dropped the roller, wiped my hands on my pants and said, "Okay, then we'll figure it out." My father sighed quietly and walked back toward the truck. I knew what that meant. He didn't approve, but he wasn't going to stop me either. He had seen enough in life to understand when something was real. We finished the shift early that day. After work, I drove her into town. She told me everything. The fight with her parents, how her father tried to take away her phone, how her mother cried but refused to listen. She said she had packed her things, left a note on the kitchen counter, and drove off before they could stop her. "They'll be mad," she said softly, "but at least they'll know I finally made a decision for myself." We spent the next 2 days looking for a place to rent. Everything decent was too expensive, so we settled for a small one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin. The water pressure was weak, but it was ours. For the first time, we didn't have to hide from anyone. The first night there, we sat on the floor eating takeout from cardboard boxes. No furniture, no television, just the sound of the washing machines humming downstairs. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "It's not much, but it feels like home." I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "it really does." The following weeks weren't easy. Money was tight. She got a job as a waitress at a cafe nearby, and I kept working with my father. We didn't tell anyone where she was at first. Her parents called her friends, even tried to find her through social media, but she stayed quiet. She needed space to breathe, to prove to herself that she wasn't just rebelling, that she really wanted this life with me. Every night after work, I would pick her up from the cafe. We would walk home together, talking about small things. Bills, groceries, what color to paint the walls once we could afford paint. It was simple, but it felt right. One Sunday morning, while we were having breakfast on the small balcony, her phone buzzed. She stared at it for a while before showing me the screen. It was her mother. The message said, "We miss you. Please come for dinner." She looked at me nervously. "Should I go?" I nodded. "If you want to, but only if you're ready." That evening, she went back to her parents' house alone. I waited for hours, not sure what to expect. When she finally came back, she looked exhausted, but peaceful. "It wasn't easy," she said, "but they listened this time. They don't like it, but they said they'll respect it." From that day on, things started to get better. Her parents didn't visit often, but they stopped calling her names or trying to change her mind. My father even began asking how she was doing, quietly pretending he didn't really care, but I knew he did. Months passed and life found its rhythm. We didn't have a fairy tale ending. No big house or expensive rings. Just two people who chose each other when it wasn't convenient. And somehow that made it more real. One afternoon, almost a year later, we were driving through the old neighborhood. I slowed down when we passed her parents' house, the one where it all began. The fresh paint we had put on the walls was still there, bright and clean. Emma smiled softly and said, "You remember that day?" "How could I forget?" I said. She looked at me and grinned. "Your smile still suits you." I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "That's where you started all this, you know?" She reached for my hand. "And I would do it again." We drove off, the sun setting behind us, the road stretching open ahead. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just working to get by. I was building something that mattered.